From news and views, issues and opportunities, we'll have in-depth conversations with decision makers to find out what they know and what they think. I'm Rico Hizon, inviting you to join the exchange because your business is our business. Renewed restrictions around a quarantine bubble in parts of Luzon, including Metro Manila, the country's main economic and business hub.
Hinahayaan natin na bukas ang ekonomiya nang tayo po ay makapaghanap buhay lahat.
An attempt to stem the tide of more infectious COVID variants that are pushing the healthcare system to a breaking point again.
Our health workers are already tired.
How will this impact jobs and livelihoods of millions and the country's overall economy, already Southeast Asia's worst performer this past year? While we saw some promising signs of hope, these rising cases of the virus are taking us a few steps back. Still, some industries are adapting and embracing this ever-changing new normal. Keeping up with the times and leading through a crisis, a legacy of quality, safe, and sustainable living in the so-called City of Firsts in our C-Suite vision. Metro Manila and 4 nearby provinces are in a so-called bubble because of record-breaking COVID cases. There are stricter restrictions on movement. What does this mean to jobs, businesses, and the economy? Let's now have an exchange with economist and Marikina City Representative Stella Kimbo. Kong Stella, Moody's Analytics just released its gloomy outlook for the Philippines. We have a worrisome economy due to high prices, a resurgence of COVID-19 infections, and limited vaccine availability. Mukhang masama, Kong Stella, ang kalagayan ng ating bansa.
Well, what are things that we can do if we're able to pass an economic stimulus package? I think that's going to be a major game changer. At this point in time, I think one of the key things that will make a lockdown effective is really more cash assistance or ayuda, which will be part of economic stimulus. So remember that in NCR, we have about 1.58 million no work, no pay workers. So in other words, in a lockdown, you have to ensure that these workers would have enough to feed their families. And that's the only way that we can be sure that they would comply with a stay-at-home policy.
So, Kong Stella, when will this new stimulus package be passed? And when will it be signed into law by President Duterte? And the cash assistance available to our kababayans who are continuing to suffer during this pandemic. And now we have this NCR Plus bubble.
Well, unfortunately, while Congress has been pushing for more economic stimulus, there's really still not a lot of push from the Senate as well as from the executive. So that's part of our job. We still have to keep convincing our counterparts to push this initiative. But for now, Congress continues to work on it. We are consolidating the various versions of Bayanihan 3. And hopefully, when we reopen sometime in May, perhaps this is something that we can discuss in more detail and hopefully approve.
So right now, we're having some kind of issues with the Senate and the executive branch. They're not being as aggressive in pushing another stimulus package. Nangyayari po ba ito, Kong Stella, because wala na tayong pera?
Well, that's what our economic managers are saying. Whatever cash we have available, which I think is about 1 trillion pesos as of the end of 2020. But they say that all of these funds are already spoken for. And so what we need to do is to look for additional sources of funds. So this is something that we are still working out with them. We are helping them look for alternative sources of funds so that a Bayanihan 3 would be viable.
So, saan natin pwedeng kunin, Kong Stella, itong additional funds? Where can we get this money to help our fellow Filipinos?
One possible source is something that was provided under the Bayanihan 2, which increases the amount of funds that the Bangko Sentral can lend to the national government. And based on this, there's something like 280 billion that the BSP can still lend to the national government. And of course, as you know, borrowing funds from your own central bank is really going to be the most generous kind of loan. So hopefully, this is something that economic managers will look into.
Pero utang ng utang tayo, Kong Stella, kahit sa mga international lenders. Lumampas na ng 10 trillion pesos ang utang ng ating bansa sa ibang mga international lenders. Baon na tayo sa utang.
Pero kung titignan natin ang ating debt to GDP ratio, manageable pa ang levels. So as of today, I believe nasa 57% ang debt to GDP ratio natin. And ayon naman sa mga experts, hanggang 60% na debt to GDP ratio, kakayanin pa natin. So ang isang 400 billion peso economic stimulus package for Bayanihan 3, that is equivalent to an additional 2 percentage points. So if we are now at 57, add 2 more points, 59%, that's still within the manageable levels of debt to GDP. And besides, Rico, thanks na rin to our economic managers, magaling ang ating credit rating. So ibig sabihin nun, we are adjudged as being able to not only to take out loans, but also more importantly, we have the ability to pay them back.
Fair enough. Kong Stella, business leader Cecilio Pedro, the owner of Happy Toothpaste, has this to say about the rising number of infection rates. Pakinggan natin.
Everybody is afraid to go out because of the fear of getting infected with the coronavirus. And so the only way at this point to get rid of that fear is to be vaccinated.
So, Kong Stella, is the only way for the economy to recover is through the vaccine and herd immunity? Mukhang hindi mangyayari yan this year.
Well, ideally, kung kaya natin mabakunahan ang 70% of the population tomorrow, then clearly that is going to be the best solution, right? Kaya lang, as you mentioned, may mga logistical issues, merong supply issues, and more importantly, Rico, meron din yung vaccine hesitation. So ibig sabihin, kailangan din mag-information campaign ang ating gobyerno para tugunan ito. So hindi natin maaasahan na yung gugustuhin natin na bukas na or sa makalawa ay matapos natin ang rollout ng vaccine program. So realistically, kailangan talaga natin ng hindi lang asahan ang vaccine program, especially in the short term. So yun din ang dahilan kung bakit pinupush natin ang additional cash assistance sa ngayon.
All right, cash assistance, the government not receiving enough of the vaccines from overseas. So, Kong Stella, should the private sector be able to procure vaccines directly from the manufacturers to immunize their employees and speed up the opening up of the economy?
Oh yes, absolutely. No, the private sector has actually been very proactive. If you think about the budget that the government has set aside, so under the 2021 GAA, we have set aside about 72 billion pesos for vaccines. That's probably not going to be enough. So clearly, donations from the private sector would certainly be very useful at this point. And they have, in fact, also pledged a commitment for this. So yes, kailangan talaga natin pagtulungan, Rico, no? So hindi lang na national government, pati local government, pati na rin ang private sector para we can roll out the vaccine program as fast as we can.
Thank you for this very interesting exchange, Marikina City Representative Stella Kimbo. And now here's a rundown of the week's top business stories. The World Bank cut its economic growth forecast for the Philippines this year from 5.9 to 5.5% because of a high domestic transmission of the coronavirus and a lagging vaccine strategy. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas kept interest rates at 2%, hoping lower borrowing costs will stimulate economic activity. And Prince Harry has a new title, Chief Impact Officer of a Silicon Valley startup. And straight ahead on the exchange where your business is our business, how this industry is adapting and embracing the ever-changing new normal. And this one's for toy lovers and space geeks, a 2,354-piece Lego set of NASA's Hubble Space Telescope. Details next, right here on CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust.
Para lang din po sa kaligtasan po ng mga tao.
Kasi syempre, pagka maraming tao sa labas, mas mataas yung chances na magkahawa-hawa.
Hindi ako sangayon doon, sir, kasi both sa sarado yung ano nila, babawas yung kita namin dito.
Kawawa naman yung manggagawa nga wala ng mga pagkain ng mga pamilya.
Glad you're staying with us right here on The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. With the NCR Plus bubble meant to keep residents inside their homes, one of the country's most popular beach destinations is feeling the pinch. Boracay authorities say tourist arrivals dropped from the daily average of 700 to only 200. Restrictions in the so-called NCR Plus bubble cover restaurants and food businesses. The government is only allowing al fresco dining, takeouts, and food deliveries. With health protocols already in place for over a year now, the industry must quick to comply. Take a look at these restaurants in a number of malls across Metro Manila. They immediately cordoned off their indoor dining areas, opened their outdoor dining spaces, and set up curbside pickups. While it's business as usual, the restrictions continue to put a dent on sales. Let's now have an exchange with Eric Teng, president of Resto PH, an umbrella organization of about 1,500 restaurants in the country. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric. Are you getting confused with the ever-changing rules for restaurants? Pwede kumain pero dapat outdoors lang.
Yeah, it can be quite confusing between cities and towns. They have different rules. And there are some restaurants that are in the malls, of course, but most are not. So we have to pay attention to a lot of the confusing rules and ordinances out there.
And Eric, you have about 20 restaurant branches. How many of them have the so-called al fresco dining? That means outdoor, not inside the mall, but outdoor with air and not inside air-conditioned malls.
Currently, I think we have about 6 or 7 units that have access to outside air. But of course, majority are inside air-conditioned malls.
So what happens now to the 14 restaurants that you have? You have to close them down.
Well, if we cannot offer delivery or takeaway because they're in a different level of a building, then we have no choice but to temporarily close down, in support of public safety requirements.
But the bottom line is, Eric, will the restrictions hurt restaurant sales, not only of your restaurant branches, but all of your member restaurants at Resto PH?
Definitely, short-term losses is, of course, guaranteed almost. But I'm more worried of the long-term stigma of what the public will feel or think about indoor dining. We are generally a safe industry inside the malls. There are plenty of filters of safety checks around, from the security guard when you enter a mall to the entrance of each restaurant. So restaurants I can consider as safe zones. But of course, the public might have a different perception after all this thing gets normalized.
So what is your sense right now, Eric, after 5 days of this NCR Plus bubble and the rising cases that we've been seeing over the past week? Are our kababayan still willing to eat out even with al fresco dining?
I think the demand is there. We haven't really killed the demand by closing down the restaurants. What we have done basically is just divert it to other venues. Like, unfortunately, they're having home parties, which is what we don't want, because that's also one of the causes of spread of the virus. You'd rather they have their parties, even small events, of course, in the restaurants where the conditions are very controlled. We have masks and shields in the restaurants. We don't have that in people's homes.
So are you better prepared now as we face another potential lockdown? Because if the cases continue to rise after April 4th, there could be another lockdown of 2 weeks. How have restaurants basically innovated?
Well, I think restaurants are quite creative groups of people. Restaurant owners are very creative groups of people. You should see some of the restaurants adapt to parking lots as their outdoor dining or open up their roof decks. It's just a fact of life that we have to live with today. This is about public safety. We have to take a back seat in order to ensure that our industry helps the public control the current surge.
So are you also trying to innovate with alfresco dining by using parking spaces and maybe even sidewalks as eating areas?
Oh yes, give me any open space, roof deck, balcony, fire escapes. If we can put a table there, we can put candles and glassware. It's a table. It's a restaurant space. It's al fresco.
Eric, Redmar Lisboa, a Grab motorcycle delivery guy who picks up fruit from your restaurants, had this to say about safety.
Kada magbibigay ako ng item sa customer ko at kukunin ko yung pera nila, nag-alcohol na agad ako paglagay ko sa sa bag ko. Kasi may pamilya rin ako inuwihan mahirap na.
So Eric, what are the plans of your member restaurants, particularly for vaccines? Has your group been able to procure from the tripartite agreements?
We have allotments for some vaccines from India. We have also placed orders already for Sinovac through IT Biotech. We are hopeful that we can get a lot of the vaccines here by May because our groups, our employees are part of the 8-4 frontliners. And just getting them vaccinated in a shortest period of time, as soon as possible, it's quite critical for our survival.
Survival is the name of the game during these challenging times for the restaurant business. Thank you so much for this exchange, Eric Teng of Resto PH. Well, your stories and insights matter to us. We asked you, how was your experience with the stricter GCQ in the NCR Plus bubble? Here are some of your responses. MM Santos said, a joke. 1 year na, yet ewan pa rin ang mga guidelines. What can we expect? It's still the same people from March 2020. Jeffrey Sioson agrees. He believes there has to be a change in leadership in the country's COVID-19 response. As for Philip Abog, he is more worried about the new COVID variants than the restrictions. He said, these new variants hit me hard. Lakas ng anxiety and stress. Nakakapagod. While Earl Culyada said business sales are again going down and buying materials are limited. Well, continue sending in your comments and your thoughts about battling COVID-19. Also join me on the chat room every Thursday night at 8 on our official CNN Philippines Facebook page. And still ahead on The Exchange, where your business is our business, how the City of Firsts continues its legacy of quality, safe, and sustainable living amid this health crisis. And this toy company's latest set is out of this world. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines. News you can trust. Glad you're staying with us right here on The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Facebook is going beyond social media and dabbling into augmented reality. Its researchers are working on wristbands that can tap into your nervous system and turn signals into actions like clicking a button. This company is committed to keeping up with the times and leading during this health crisis, continuing its legacy of quality, safe, and sustainable living. Let's now have an exchange with Muriel Abogado, Vice President and Zone Manager of Araneta City, the City of First. Muriel, great to have you with us on the program. How is business among your retail tenants during this pandemic?
Despite the pandemic, we have set up the necessary assistance to our retailers and business partners. Like, we have developed and created online services such as firstly the Araneta City Assist, wherein you can order stores within Araneta City.
Yes.
Second is the Ask Ara. Ask Ara, wherein this is a personal customer service for Gateway Mall stores only.
But Muriel, I want to ask you, for your physical stores, have you been able to waive and deferred rents to help your retail tenants?
Definitely, we provided rental concessions to all our business partners. This pandemic should bring out the best in us, helping one another overcome this health crisis.
And how is the Araneta Group, Muriel, trying to improve foot traffic in malls despite the tighter restrictions? Because I've been seeing so many pictures and videos, and I went to a few of the malls over the past few days, and we're not seeing many customers in the mall and in the stores.
That's expected, Rico. As you will know, there is an upsurge in the number of COVID cases. So naturally, people tend to stay home. But despite having a 50% drop in traffic, business is still coping as of the moment.
And Muriel, how extensive are your rental concessions and the deferment of these rents for your tenants and retailers?
Well, very significant concession, Rico. We give very significant concession to our tenants, ranging from 50%.
50% retail rental concession. That is very generous for the retailers who are basically in your Araneta City malls. But on the flip side, Muriel, how are you helping your employees and staff during these challenging times?
Some of the non-essential employees, we advise them to work from home. And only the essential employees, such as operations personnel, are required to be on site. In addition, benefits are given in advance to help them cope with the present situation.
And has the Araneta Group, Muriel, been able to procure vaccines for its employees and staff?
Well, that's in the pipeline. The vaccines. So we'll just have to wait for its arrival.
And what lessons have you learned over the past year during this pandemic that is helping you in this current situation of the NCR Plus bubble, which could be extended if we see the number of cases in Metro Manila continuing to rise?
Rico, that's a tough question, because this is the first time that we have experienced this type of public health emergency. But nonetheless, I think the key words to be remembered is that we are able to adapt on the present situation, do some innovations, and hope to overcome this crisis.
Thank you so much for this insightful exchange. Muriel Abogado, Araneta City Vice President and zone manager. Well, Lego's new set is out of this world. The toy company is releasing a model of the Discovery Shuttle and Hubble Space Telescope, perfect for Lego fans who want to reach for the stars. And amid the ever-changing new normal, innovation is indeed key to survive and thrive. Here are some guiding words from Michael Dell of Dell Technologies. We are all navigating this new normal together as we lock arms virtually and try to help one another in the many ways we can. Our vast world suddenly feels a little smaller, but a lot more connected. And this is the exchange we make sense of the facts and the figures and the ups and downs of the business cycle, because your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Thanks for watching CNN Philippines. News you can use. News you can trust.